Loading. Okay, here we go. We're live. I'm just going to update it now. Alrighty. So, okay. All right. Done. Publish. Okay, so we are live here. Greetings, everyone. I'm here with Dr. Andre Saine. This is NDs for Truth, where we're getting together naturopathic doctors and possibly other folks from other walks of life to discuss important topics for this day and age and to many of us are concerned about the direction of naturopathic medicine. This is going to be one of the main focuses of tonight's discussion with Dr. Saine. And this gentleman here with me has a long list of amazing accomplishments that he has done in his life. I'm going to I just cherry picked a few of them, and perhaps I'll get a chance to ask you a little bit more, Dr. Saine. Well, let me just give you a little background here for people that are coming to watch. Dr. Saine is a 1982 graduate of National College of Naturopathic Medicine in Portland, Oregon. He is board certified in homeopathy in 1988 by the Homeopathic Academy of Naturopathic Physicians and has been teaching and lecturing on homeopathy since 1985. He is considered one of the world's foremost experts on the subject of homeopathy. One of the main points of his clinical work is the homeopathic treatment of patients suffering from very serious chronic illness and chronic diseases. In addition to his private practice in Montreal, Canada, he has been the dean and main instructor for the postgraduate program of the Canadian Academy of Homeopathy, one of the foremost homeopathic schools in the world since 1986. Dr. Saine is a much sought after homeopathic teacher, holding seminars in Canada, the US, and European countries. He is known as a homeopathic scholar based on his in-depth studies of the work of the great masters of the past and based on his practice of pure Hahnemannian homeopathy. A highly acclaimed 500-hour course on homeopathic chronic prescribing for professionals taught by Dr. Saine is available on DVD through the Canadian Academy of Homeopathy. I think that you also offer this as well live once a year. Is that true in the summer?
No. What
Okay.
what we were offering before COVID is um, a course on essential of acute and chronic prescribing, which
Ah,
is a,
yes.
which is a 7-day course. So it's a 42-hour course on putting the 500-hour course in 42 hours, a summary. And so many people come to this course like 2, 3, 4 times. They want to listen again, again. It's like putting everything in perspective. But if they want to go in depth, they would take the 500 hours, which we're trying to put online now, not on DVD, because not many people can use DVD, and it's very awkward technology.
Yeah, right. Okay, thanks for that clarification. I've actually known many students from all different schools that are saying, "Hey, I'm going to Dr. Saine's course this summer." So that's the one that they're talking about. That sounds like a great course. Where was I here in your thingy? So other exceptional titles include homeopathy and surgery and first aid, homeopathy and atopic diseases, homeopathic prophylaxis, resolving difficult cases, and cancer, among others. Two of his teachings from transcripts of homeopathy seminars given in the early 90s in Holland have also been published. Psychiatric Patients 1 in 1997 and The Method, Lectures on Pure Homeopathy Part 2 in 2000. Dr. Saine has also been busy for many years editing the voluminous work of Dr. Adolf Lippe, MD, his much anticipated book entitled Lessons in Pure Homeopathy from the Writings of Hahnemann's Best Student and Medicine's Most Successful Practitioner, Adolf Lippe, MD, is expected very soon. So that's the last that I have. I have some other points I'd like to go over with you, but I wouldn't mind just hearing a couple words from you about Dr. Lipe and how you see him as being the medicine's most successful practitioner, and if you could tell us when that book is expected to come out.
Sure. So when I was a student at National College of Naturopathic Medicine in the early 1980, 81, 82, I would go to the library, and we had a very very good library of old journal. Like we had like complete series of the International Armenian Association the proceeding, and we had complete series. And when you look in there, you look at the meeting they had, and you look at their discussion they had, and I thought that the way they understood homeopathy and how they discuss homeopathy was at the level that didn't exist around in my environment or in the books I was consulting or in seminar that I would attend. I thought like there was a discrepancy between how homeopathy was practiced in the 19th century versus what was known today. So I became more interested, and I started to review the literature. And as I was reviewing the literature, all the arrows were pointing to Lippe, whether it was Nash or Allen or Boger. It was all pointing to Lippe. So I says, okay, let's look at Lippe. So I start to collect Lippe. And the more I read Lippe, the more I says, this is the guy that knows the most. And then I realized that Lippe had probably the best result ever published by a physician in the history of medicine. So in 1988, I decided to write, to gather all his writing and write about a biography about him and edit his writing. We're in, we are 32 years later. It's not finished. It's
Oh,
not finished
jeez.
for several reasons. Because first of all, there's many things that happens along the decades. Like
Sure.
there'll be subject that I need to find out the answer. For instance, let's say the subject of fever, it comes up. So I say, okay, I have to know everything about fever. I want to know everything about vaccination. So I just finished a project on vaccination. I was I was um, I was
How many hours did you prepare for that? I think you told me it was
fever for which one? For
for the
vaccination?
vaccinations. Yeah.
Maybe 500 hours. I think the paper, I don't remember how many pages. Maybe it's 200 page, and maybe there's 800 references. But it's a very good. I'm very proud of what I did. I still have to read 2 or 3 books to complete it, and then I will try to publish it. However, there's many things that comes up. When there's like now there was COVID, I had to put things on the burner to deal with the COVID, and I did several conferences on the COVID, and I work in nursing home. So Lipe always get delayed because I know what Lipe had to say, and I'm working on this, and I still have probably only 500 hours to put on Lipe to finish it. And it's very interesting work because, and the more I delay it, the better it gets, because I am putting together 3 generations of homeopathic thinking and results. So the first thinking is Hahnemann, the early thinking, what Lippi brought, where he brought homeopathy to in his time, and now where we can go with homeopathy since. So let's say I talk about pathology, I have to talk about all the evolution of the potency over time, and Finke came along because Lippi thought that Finke potency were the best. So I had to get the Finke, experiment with them. So then I can give an idea of what Lippi was talking about the Finke. So it's a work in time, but when it will be finished, there's a policy that I have that I learned from Dunham, Carol Dunham. Is when he died, his brother-in-law said, we knew him very well. He says he never wrote anything that need to be edited.
Hmm.
So in other words, it never need to be changed. And it's true. I try to follow this. And I don't think there's a paper that I wrote that I would like to change something. It's a paper that I wrote in 1980 or 88 or something. There's nothing I can change because I said something really wrong. So Lipe would be the same thing. When it's done, don't need to go back. It's done. So
Amazing.
just, I'm a patient person, very patient. And when it will come out, it will be out. So, but meanwhile, I teach all Lipe practice, and I go beyond it because we have to stand on the shoulder of our
Of the
predecessor.
giants.
That's right. So we can go a bit further now.
Amazing, amazing, Andre. And so you said you're patient. You're also extremely thorough. I can give an example to the listeners. Joe Schwartz, who's a very anti-homeopathy character personality here in Montreal. He's been saying for 30 years, where's the evidence of homeopathy? Where are the papers? Where's the research? So Dr. Saine had a debate with him at McGill University. Lots of people came, and um, Andre started to present paper after paper, research by organizations, very credible stuff. My jaw hit the ground. I didn't even know that half of this stuff existed for the evidence of the efficacy of homeopathy scientifically, without scientific doubt. And then Joe said, after asking for it for 30 years, he said, let's not compare papers with papers. He just dismissed all of that research with a wave of his hand because he's not really interested in the scientific evidence. He has this bias against homeopathy, and that was clear. Um, so then after the whole debate, you prepared a response to some of the questions that had come up at the end, or
No, it's not exactly that. After the debate, Joe Schwartz contacted me and he says, I have some question for you.
oh yeah.
And he sent me maybe 15 questions. I said, listen, I'm going to answer your question if you answer mine. He says, fine. So I sent him 27 questions. My 27 question were on maybe 40 pages because each question was like half a page. No, it was on 15 pages because each question was taking half a page, and there was even reference to in my question. After he started to answer the first question, and he says, "I have enough." He didn't want to go further because he was saying things during the debate. You were saying things like Hahnemann discovered the potentization of the remedy by going on his horse
Donkey.
and on his
His
carriage
donkey.
and the
Oh.
carriage and so on. I said, can you give me the reference for that? In the debate, you said that. Give me the reference. I would like to know the reference. It there's no reference. The reference isn't. I know the reference. It's called Akadabra. It's somebody that wrote a book against homeopathy in 1840, but he has no reference. So that's not a
Uh-huh.
reference.
Right.
Somebody invents something. So it's not. Hahnemann never talked about that, and actually, it's a very much more complex the way he discovered the potentization phenomena. So he knew that he was cut up and he couldn't go anywhere. But I did answer all his questions, and he posted them on the what is it? Social is Society for Society and Science at McGill University. It is there,
Yeah, yeah.
and then I had another debate after that a few years later at the following year, actually, at the University of Connecticut with the biggest skeptic in the world against homeopathy, because Schwartz was the biggest in Canada. This is the
Yeah.
biggest in the world.
Oh,
And
wow.
there was also a post debate of writing exchange. And this fellow, his name is Stephen Novella, he asked me a question: what's the best clinical evidence for homeopathy? Clinical. So I answer him over a 1.5 year period. A paper I did in 4 sections. It was 450 page, and it was on pneumonia.
Oh my gosh.
And it's a really good paper because I reviewed the whole thing about infectious disease and prophylaxis, and also I review people dying during the 1918-1919 of pandemic flu epidemic, because when they died, it was generally due to pneumonia. So we had a lot of statistics, and he says it's too long. When I was done, he says it's too long to read. So then, therefore, I wrote a summary that would take 20 minutes to read, and then we were waiting for his answer. So we didn't get a response. So the moderator says, we sent you a Dr. Saine's summary. We are expecting a response from you a week ago. No response. 2 weeks goes, a month go by, 2 months go by, 3 months go by. So I said to the moderator, I says, listen, there's nothing he can answer because it's too
Yeah.
obvious.
Yeah.
So he doesn't know, his jaw is dropped and he doesn't know what to say. And he cannot say, oh, I'm surprised to find all this information. It's when something is contrary to your worldview, it could be very difficult to accept.
I believe the term is that's going around about that is cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, sure.
Something happens, it triggers some kind of an emotion, I think. Like that person, I think you said his name was Stephen Novella. Yeah. So he has some kind of invested interest in disproving homeopathy, and he's already said a million things. So his reputation is on the line, his expertise is on the line. It's, the cognitive dissonance you could imagine from that. uh, but in any case, the world got a 450-page paper about the efficacy of homeopathy in pneumonia. So that's a plus. That's a plus. Well, that's great. Now there's another work that you were doing that you had told me about a number of years ago, and that was your work on general the effectiveness of homeopathy in the history of humanity for epidemics and pandemics. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, it's not the history of epidemics in humanity, it's the history of homeopathy in times of epidemic. So
Okay.
it's called the weight of evidence because there's so much evidence. I've written about 10% of the. It's not a paper. It's a big work. I wrote about 10% of it, and I already written 2,000 page. Uh, and I've already and of the two in the 2,000 page document that I've done so far, I would say there's probably 2,500 references, but I still have about 8,000 references that I didn't read, and I have lots more material that I've accumulated since that I have need to be read and incorporated. So this is a long-term project. Like when there's small project that comes up, like I've done a lot of interesting um, sideline that puts me have me put Leapy and the weight of evidence on the back burner. Like in the last few years, I did a large paper on the vital force. I did this year was the vaccination paper. 2 year last year was well, I'm writing a book on pneumonia for. I was contracted to write a book on pneumonia, so I'll have to finish it probably this winter. Um, every year there is something up that comes up that I develop a subject. Well, 2 years ago, I investigate the aluminum poisoning, and I came with a solution. This year, we work on the use of clay for therapeutic use of clay, which is interesting because the aluminum um, is bound to silica, and that's how you can detoxify from aluminum. And but it's also an aluminum silicate. The clay is aluminum silicate, so it's the other side of the aluminum poisoning issue.
Yeah.
Every year, I will address certain subject like this. I have to work on it and develop the subject. So let me see. Yeah, there was the vital force. There was vaccination. Last year. Anyway, there's a lot of subject that I will touch like this that I'll go in depth. Like history of medicine. I'm teaching a course on history of medicine for 8 years now. I love the subject and I go very deep in it, and I understand very well the history of medicine and and where naturopathic medicine came out and how it came out, and the sources probably like nobody else knows it because the resources are not easy to obtain.
Mm. I remember you were I even remember, I think I saw you on the highway. You were driving to Michigan. I met my wife in Michigan, so I was making that route and I saw you. You were
Not
going
on the
to,
highway?
I saw you in the highway. Yeah. I saw you in your car and I was like, what is Andre doing down here? Like, and then I made the connection. You were going to U of M, right? The University of Michigan,
Yeah.
because they have a huge homeopathic library there.
Yeah, they have the biggest library in the world of homeopathy. It's like 12,000 volume. And I would go there once, 1 week a month about for many years. And I would come back with tons and tons of photocopy. There's a guy that would photocopy for me over there. Now I would come back with a lot of information, but that's what I use. That was my basis. But now all of this information is digitalized, so you don't need to travel anymore.
And
Everything comes to your own computer.
and I might say it'd be good if all of your stuff is digitalized too, because how many readers today? I mean, think about the students today. Think about people. How many people are going to read a compendium? I'm calling it a compendium of your your thousands and thousands of page, the weight of evidence book, like it'll be good that it'll be at their fingertips, searches, that kind of a thing. I don't know if you plan on doing
Well,
that.
listen, for a practitioner, we can summarize in one sentence. Homeopathy has dealt with epidemic disease, infectious disease very, very easily and successfully. That's universally, every country in the world, regardless of the time or the physician. It's easy for uh, to treat people with the most serious infectious disease, epidemic disease with homeopathy. So this is the baseline, and that's what a clinician should know, and that's why that's a good reason to know homeopathy. If they want to know the proof, then you can look the different aspect of it. So one would be cholera, because that was one of the first one to be dealt with. It was 1831. But there will be my favorite subject is rabies, because there's nobody in conventional medicine that have ever recovered their health after having rabies. But in homeopathy, we do have cases reported that have recovered with rabies. And it would be very, very interesting to, like some years ago, I was on the island of Grenada. There's a medical school there. It's called St. George University. And it's an American medical school and also veterinarian school. And they have about 100 animals that are brought to them every year with suspected rabies. They have been bitten by a rabid animal. It's endemic on the island.
Mm,
And I asked them, what do you do with the animal? They say, we put them in a cage, and once we wait like about 40 days, if we see they start to have rabies, we kill them. I say, wouldn't you be interested to take these animals, and if they have rabies, we could try to see if we could find a treatment? He says, sure.
yeah.
Right? But he says, if we do this, we would have to change the lab to a lab category 4, which means people would have to go there with the suit and so on, like extremely. So it would take a lot of money to do this, but it would be a great project. It would be easy, relatively easy to do. And we could show that here, experimentally, you have animals that are, instead of going to be killed because they've developed rabies, you could treat them and show the success, because it's relatively easy. The interesting thing about rabies that you find out is um, if people are in the last stage of rabies, they're in total convulsion and unconscious, and they're treated there at that moment with rabies, they will start to recover, and they will recover fairly fast. The convulsion will stop within 12 hours, and then they'll start to recover, and maybe they will take a 3-week period for to be normal again. In other words, they for the first 3 weeks after the treatment begins, they may be weak and convalescent. They might still be in bed, but the interesting thing is animals that survive rabies, because some animals have survived rabies, or humans, there's some humans that have survived rabies, they're not normal. They're
Mm,
completely handicapped. They have brain damage and so on. But the interesting thing with homeopathy, even though the people are on the brinks of death with rabies, they seem to come back 100% back to normal.
amazing. Amazing. So I want to take this topic. Oh, actually, I do want to introduce the viewers to the idea that, your specialty, your expertise, and a lot of what we're talking about with you and your research and writing is with homeopathy, but you're also a naturopathic doctor, and you use other modalities in your practice to help patients. Just the couple of weeks ago, I came to visit you, and you brought me outside, and you showed me a plant from the Euphorbiaceae family, which is good for skin cancer, that you use with patients with skin cancer, and you use hydrotherapy. You're also a chiropractor. Do you ever adjust your patients?
Yeah, sure, sure. I do. I do manipulative work, like we call it manual medicine.
Yeah.
But I treat mainly people that have very serious problem after concussion or head injury or facial injury. Or like today, I talked to a patient and says, I've never been well since birth, because I was at the forceps delivery. It took 24 hours. I was born with indentation of my head, and I was like a screaming baby. And then at 7 years old, she was in a car accident with a huge whiplash, and she's never been well since that time. Well, those kind of cases I love, because I can treat them, and usually within a few minutes, they're much, much, much better.
Wow.
Yeah. So
That's great.
I do use my hands much for that kind of cases. I love to do this.
Sure, sure. So I'm sure this is a topic that would be fun to discuss all the different things you do because you are a naturopathic doctor. And that's what I appreciate that about you and about naturopathic doctors is that we have tools, multiple tools to help a patient. Now, my question to you is how, like, if we looked at the effectiveness, the power of healing of the different modalities that we have, how powerful or how much would you rank homeopathy in the list of all the modalities that we have at our fingertips?
Well, you see, um, the the beauty of naturopathic medicine is we can use any forces or influence of nature to help people to recover their health in a gentle, complete, in a safe way, and in durable manner. So we can use any force of nature. So we have to find what combination of these force and influence we can use. The best healer is a vital force. We all know that. It's the only healer actually is the vital
Yes.
force.
Yes.
So the anything that will help to normalize the vital force to heal would have priority. And there's nothing in nature that is as powerful as homeopathy to normalize the vital force. If you have somebody with pneumonia, let's say, and you treat them with hydrotherapy, you'll have a very, very high recovery rate. The recovery rate with hydrotherapy is 98.5%. The recovery rate before the use of antibiotic was 20 was well we'll talk about the death rate before antibiotic. The death rate without antibiotic before the era of antibiotic was 24%. If nothing was done to people, it's called the expectation. There was 3 studies done and 3 different places with expectation. Nothing is done. People are just put in the bed, have fresh air, they're giving water, but no treatment is done. 21%. That means the conventional way of treating people, we're killing 3% of the people. But with homeopathy, it was 0.5%. Hydrotherapy, 1.5%. So hydrotherapy is very good, but homeopathy is even better. But if what's the difference between recovering from pneumonia with homeopathy and recovering with hydrotherapy? Both are very, very high chance of recovery. By the way, the last meta-analysis today, the last modern meta-analysis on the treatment of pneumonia in the Western world, Western medicine, is 11.5% mortality rate, or is it 12%? 12% about 12% mortality rate is still 12% today.
Globally, with all factors in
No,
mind.
pneumonia. No, it's not all pneumonia. It's only community acquired pneumonia, not hospital or healthcare acquired pneumonia. Because if you look at nosocomial pneumonia like acquired in a hospital, the death rate could be easily 50, 75, 80, 90%, depending on the group. If it's in a nursing home or somebody is beyond a respirator, the death rate is 80, 90%. However, if you just look community acquired pneumonia, and we look at community acquired pneumonia for homeopathy, it's 11.5%, or let's say 12% with conventional medicine, and with homeopathy, 0.5%.
That's incredible. I wanted to just clarify one thing. Now, the expectation before the use of antibiotics was 24% death rate.
21%.
Oh, 21. And after it,
Expectation, no, expectation. Nothing is done.
that's right.
With conventional treatment, with bleeding and so on, they would be 24%.
Okay, okay. That's what I didn't understand
So
before. So that
there was
clarifies it.
3% of people with allopathy that die from the treatment.
Right.
3%. That's a lot.
Comparing those statistics, it's a lot. That's tens of thousands of people a year, maybe more. I don't know how many the
Well,
total.
let's put it this way: pneumonia was the main killer in the 19th century. There was a time was diphtheria, then was pneumonia. That after that was tuberculosis. Now it's heart disease. But
Mm,
during the 19th century, there was a time when pneumonia was the main killer of people. And
right.
when we say 3% of people that die from treatment, that system of medicine should never have been permitted to exist.
Right.
But
Yeah.
it is this system of medicine that has continued until now.
Yes.
And that's when you study history, you see where we are now, because where it wasn't 100 years ago
Well,
or
well, that's a great
120 years ago.
question. That well, how can a system of medicine that has this result continue to be the official, the respected, the authoritative medicine for our society? How is
It,
that possible?
it's a question of influence. Um, so the more a group will have influence, the more they will influence the politician, the governments, the institution to abide to their group. So it was the adopted system. There was many system of medicine in the 19th century. You have to understand that conventional medicine was called between 1780 to about 1850 was called heroic medicine. Heroic medicine because they use heroic method to treat people, very drastic. They
Yeah.
would give mercury, they would purge them, they would cauterize them, and because they want to get rid of the disease. So you have to be really a hero to survive it. And the best example of heroic medicine is the treatment of George Washington, the first president of the United States. If you read his death in
Bloodletting.
1799, it's terrible. They bled him about 2/3 of his blood, and they cauterized him, and it's terrible what they did. Anybody would have died with the condition he's. But with homeopathy, he would have survived very easily,
Yeah.
and with hydrotherapy, he would have survived very easily. He would not
Yeah.
have died.
No, absolutely. So,
Okay, but this system of medicine is the one that was supported by the governments, recognized by insurance company, and all the other systems are put aside, and it's difficult to get recognition, to get to get uh,
accreditation.
yeah, to be regulated. It's very very difficult, but eventually we will win because we have the truth in our hand. Very simple.
I like your optimism, and I share the same optimism. I think that the truth is a permanent principle, whereas things that are based on false principles cannot survive forever, even if they try to. And so, I mean, I don't know if we need to really go too much into this. I just want to get your opinion or your feeling about this. So they have this influence, and that's what has enabled them to continue. But what other factors have to be involved to continue a medicine that has this? I mean, we could see that conventional medical model is not very effective for treating a number of things or anything that's chronic per se. Maybe you can give it some kudos in acute situations where heroic measures are necessary. Um, but how is it that they have this influence? Are you aware of that? Like, does your history?
It's historical.
Yeah,
Uh, they have been in the medical school since there's medical school. They're teaching this. So because it was drastic measure they were using, like during that period of 1780 to 1850, that's 70 years. The time of heroic medicine, there
yeah,
were alternative system of practice that developed. Homeopathy, botanic medicine, as a specialty, because botanic medicine was used in conventional medicine, but now as a specialty, as a system by itself. Then there was orthopathy or hygienic system, like with
yeah.
Jenny. And then there was hydrotherapy that came as a system of medicine to treat all the patient with only hydrotherapy. And then there was a mix of hygienic measure with hydrotherapy. And then there was the people that came with manual therapy. Andrew Steele and Palmer came with osteopathy and
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 Cairo.
and chiropractic. And then there was Benedict Gloss a few years later, because osteopathy was 1892, chiropractic 1895, naturopathy 1896. Benedict Gloss says we'll put all of them together. So he put all of them together, like it was practiced by nature cure healer in Germany. They were putting hydrotherapy, hygienic measure, and botanic medicine, like Father Knight, for instance. So here we put everything together, including manual medicine of osteopathy and chiropractic.
Right,
And
right.
we have naturopathic medicine, but we're still alternative to the main system of medicine, the one that is recognized, the one that is benefit from the government support, like university are paid by government, like in Canada, for instance. They will not pay for the Canadian Naturopathic College, the government. No, we're not. We're not part of the equation. So, but these um, movement of alternative medicine will eventually conquer. In other words, we will be the center of medicine. Why? Because it makes sense. It's wise. It's a wise approach to healthcare. It's it's very very effective. It's not expensive. It's not dangerous, and it's easily accessible to the people. And we can easily teach it, and people can practice it well, quite easily.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fantastic. Now, how much of this system that has managed to, convince people, the public, that it's the best choice for their health. We know when they're sick, if they have cancer or something, people, I hear this all the time, people, you got to go to the doctor, you have to go this agenda or whatever you want to call it has completely taken over the mind of humanity, that this is the proper system. And there's a percentage that doesn't apply to that. But so my question is, um, how did this, or has this system infiltrated into naturopathic medicine? And if so, how?
What do you mean this system? You mean conventional medicine,
Conventional medicine, the system, yeah.
medical thinking, conventional
Medical
medicine.
thinking, yes.
Okay, conventional medical, it's infiltrating naturopathic. Yes, for sure, because you have people that don't do their homework, and they improvise themselves as dean of a school or president of a school and so on, and they think they know. But the worst thing is to think you know when you don't know, because then everything can go wrong there. So you cannot improvise yourself and say, I understand nature, I understand how to use nature for healing. It's not because you have an ND degree after your name or you have a PhD in education that you can um, um, create a system of education that will permit graduate to um, deal, let's say, with patient with the main killers, like people coming with heart disease or type 2 diabetes or patient with hypertension. They cannot deal with it in conventional medicine. But if you believe that if they can't, we can't, then we will not teach it to our student. But it's easy to deal with in naturopathic medicine, very easy. But not people do it. If conventional medicine said only antibiotic must be used for a bacterial infection, then some naturopathic doctor will believe the same because they don't think by themselves. They don't have a knowledge of history. They don't have clinical experience. But the easiest way to treat people with any kind of infection is to use the methods we have always used that are very, very successful, very efficacious, easy to use, not expensive, not dangerous for nature, not dangerous for the patient. It's easy to treat people with infectious disease, people with burns and wounds and bed sore and gangrene. They will cut the limbs in conventional medicine. Bed sore, they will suffer for years and years and years. In naturopathic medicine, it's so easy to treat these people. It's like you want to cry when you hear they've been 15 years in the bed and with the bed sores, when it's so easy to treat them. Um,
Well, this is so, it's so inspiring because you're an elder of the profession. The the elders are the record keepers through experience, through knowledge. If you're still practicing after decades, it means you've been doing it well. And you're not going to be bashing your head against the wall, not helping people for all that time. So you have this wisdom, you have this experience. How is it that the elders have systematically been eliminated from most of the colleges? Can you address that, Andre? Do you have any sense of what's going on there with that?
no, because I'm not in the only naturopathic college I teach is the local college here in Montreal. It's a French speaking college.
Yeah.
It's not yet accredited. They had applied in 2014, but that's the only college I'm teaching at currently. I just know that I see graduates from school for the last 20 years. About I see them every summer. They would come here to a summer course. I would give the essential course. I said every year since 2005 maybe. no, maybe even before. In any case, I can't remember now. So I would meet the student from most of the naturopathy school, and I'm not very impressed with the knowledge. And now, could I refer a patient with pneumonia to any of those graduates? I don't think so. Could I refer a patient with a bed sore? I don't think so. Could I refer a patient with severe hypertension? I don't think so. I don't think they're able to do any of the basic thing that we should be able to do. You know, if you send a patient to, if somebody graduates from dental school and you have they say I have a relative in Utah, you just look for a dentist and you just go there and you will have probably this more or less the same type of
Yeah.
care as with here.
Yeah.
Natural medicine is not like this. The knowledge and the practice does not transfer into the school and into the student. The school have different agenda perhaps, and maybe the engineers have as many students as possible, and they have influence from supplement company, which is not should not be the core, should not influence the course of education. If they want to support an institution, fine, but don't influence the education. So, and then we need to really do a soul searching and say, okay, this is what a naturopathic doctor needs to know. What do a graduate know, and why it's not transmitted? Why is this not transmitted? You know, the naturopathic students should be very familiar with hydrotherapy. Very few graduates I hear know hydrotherapy. They should know. They should know how to use their hands for palpation and correcting human structure and so on. Dr. Bastier, I know I precepted with him, and people came to Dr. Bastier just to be touched by Dr. Bastier. And I know Bill Mitchell used to say, the moment Dr. Bastier entered the rooms, the healing begins. But I think it's also when he touched the patient, there
Yeah.
was a lot of healing. His hands were the hands of an angel. You know, I always said that when I touched the hand of Dr. Bastier, says, you have the hand of an angel. He had very, very good hands. And he instilled in us to use our hands all the time and touch our patient. He would say, learn to touch your patient. So yeah, so the student have to learn certain things that it seems we're going further and further away from that uh, that important knowledge of how to use the force and influence of nature in order to help the people to recover their health completely and in a durable manner. Now, what it seems to me is like they're doing patching work, and they'll give supplements for the guts and supplements for this and so on. So herb for this and so on. There's nothing, like no real healing happening.
There's no synthesis of even of a philosophy there. It's very allopathic. It's very this for that, or it's what do you call it?
Green allopathy,
Functional medicine.
yeah,
You know,
functional medicine, green allopathy, which is not naturopathic medicine.
no, functional medicine has a little bit more intelligence than just strictly trying to suppress the symptoms, but it's still very piecemeal and there's no unifying principle. When I hear you talk about Dr. Bastier, when I hear you mention all these things, I can feel in your presence and in your mind, in your expression, I could feel a living, breathing medicine, which is exciting. This is what attracted me to the medicine. And when I studied at CCNM and I graduated in 2000, this is 20 years ago, and there were teachers there that were still teaching homeopathy. And they're still teaching there too, but there's been a battle there. CCNM is trying to get rid of homeopathy. I spoke to Bob Bernhardt. He's the president a couple of years ago, and I was writing an article in NDNR. It's called "The Day the Music Died." I was talking about the essence of naturopathy leaving the education system, and he said, I don't know if in 15, 20 years if homeopathy is even going to be a part of the program. And then he kind of denied that after, but he did say that to me. And so, you know, the medicine, naturopathic medicine, it's based in these principles, and the colleges are just kind of systematically getting rid of it more and more. So you had mentioned a few possible reasons for that, a few influences. They have different agendas. Let's get as many students as possible. And then the supplement companies that might have a vested interest. If you look at the conventional medical model, the big pharma owns the educational system so that they can graduate the doctors that will practice in the model of selling their drugs. So it makes sense that the influence of the nutraceutical companies, and if you look at some of the history there of how they were developed, some of them have either been bought out by the big pharma, or they were big pharma, and this is a branch of big pharma. So it looks like the same model that's taken over conventional medicine is also at play in naturopathic medicine.
Correct. And
Yeah.
um, yeah, so the shouldn't there shouldn't be external influence to an educational program. The education should be, what is the goal we want to achieve? How do we meet this goal? And there should not be external influence that to uh, uh, uh,
Yeah.
interfere with this goal of having somebody that is competent to use the force of nature and all the influence of nature in order that the people can heal safely, quickly, and permanently. So there should be no interference from governments or outside influence. Commercial influence should not be.
And
and
the
and, and our profession is a sacred profession. The profession of physician is a sacred profession and should be
yes.
respected in this way. It's a very sacred, and they should be knowledge should be transferred from one generation to the other, and with the knowledge, with using science and so on, that's fine, but it should not be uh, 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 the education should not be influenced by uh, external interests, and especially commercial interests.
I agree that we need to have principles. Not just like the principles that govern us are the principles, the idea that we're here to serve humanity. We even take that in our vow. I am as a doctor of naturopathic medicine, I vow to serve humanity, and I take this seriously. I have that in my heart. Yeah, I know you do too. um, you had talked about the president. The president seems to be an important position, and if as observed, I haven't seen all of the colleges, but I've observed that it seems like the president is fulfilling a position of running the school like a business, not necessarily. Of course, you need to run the school as a business. If you don't run it as a business at all, it's going to fail for that reason, but you need to run it with the principles primarily and then as a business secondarily. um, have you seen this as well? Like what would you like to see the president and the head of administration doing to
Well, it's not.
run?
Yeah, it's not so much the president and the administrators. It's the board of director. The board of director is the one that gives instruction to the administrator of the school. So on the board of director, there might be people that are good in finance, perhaps, and it's good to have people that would advise the school on finance. But is that where will it be on the board of director that we would find the soul of naturopathic medicine? I assume not, unless
Mm,
unless maybe a small school like Boucher might be able to do that. But that's where you have to find the soul. You have to remember that the way we see naturopathic medicine today is what Dr. Bastier wanted to be. You have to understand the history. So we had an naturopathic school. They were usually associated with chiropractic school. And because of chiropractic pressure to be recognized, they say we have to separate ourselves from naturopathic medicine. And there was Dr. Button at Western States. He refused to cut the naturopathic profession, the section. It was the
mm,
only school that survived the pressure of the chiropractic profession. But when he died in June 1956, they cut the program. The next day, the board
yeah.
shut the
he's
program.
he's he's gone. Let's do it. Come
Yeah,
on.
that's right. He's gone. And Dr. Button was a really great supporter of naturopathic medicine. So we needed a school, at least one school to exist, for instance, in British Columbia, in order that the law in British Columbia uh, could exist. In the law, it says you need to have one school. And that's one of the reasons that Joe Boucher from British Columbia would go down to Portland and teach every week. You have to travel 5 hours down, 5 hours up every Friday to go and teach for maybe 30 years to keep the school open. And the school was founded by three people local in Portland, but the soul of the school, the program, was Dr. Bastyr. Bastyr had brought obstetrics. Why? Because he had practiced obstetrics, he had learned obstetrics, he had learned minor surgery, he brought minor surgery, he had learned homeopathy from Dr. Bryan, CP Bryan, he brought homeopathy. And when he would teach us, Dr. Bastyr, 3/4 of a lecture was on homeopathy. Like, for instance, I remember the first lecture he gave us was a 3-hour or 4-hour lecture he gave us on endocrinology. And I would say 2/3 of the lecture or 3/4 of the lecture was on homeopathy. When I graduated from school, I would say 2/3 of my colleagues, classmate, specialized in homeopathy. So homeopathy was a central part. Today, I understand that it's as almost inexistent in some school.
Yeah.
So the way that Dr. Bastyr developed uh, naturopathic medicine is we're going away more and more and more from it, and it's a sad thing because he really understood and really represent the soul of our profession.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And so was was Dr. Bastyr, was he the one who inspired you for the first into homeopathy?
No, I was inspired into homeopathy when I first I was in chiropractic school, 1 week in chiropractic school, and had a teacher who had to quit his practice. He unfortunately his office burned in Halliburton, Ontario, up north near Algonquin Park. He was at the insurance person. He was signing the paper for insurance while his wife phoned and says the house and the office are burning. So he lost his house and he had just set a new X-ray equipment and he lost everything. So he came to Toronto to teach. And when he started to teach, and I was a first year student, it was first week in school, he put his name on the board. He put Dr. Joseph Bunyan, DC, which I understood was a chiropractor, of course. And then he put ND and he put in parentheses HOM. And I did not know what ND was and HOM. So at lunchtime, I was sitting in front of him. I said, Dr. Bunyan, what's ND? So he explained to me a bit. And I said, what's HOM? He tried to explain, but he said, if you want to know more about HOM, like homeopathy, he says, I practice on Tuesday and Thursday night and on Saturday at a certain office not far from the chiropractic school. So 2 weeks later, on a Thursday night, I go to his office, and the office is empty. The waiting room is empty. The office door is closed. So I sit in the waiting room and I pick up a brochure, which I still have today.
Oh yeah. No.
No, it's not it.
Okay, okay. I thought you had
That,
it next to you.
no,
Okay.
I don't have it next to me, but I have the brochure like this, about this size.
Yeah.
And you open it, it's National College of Naturopathic Medicine, the only school of naturopathic medicine that still exists at that time. So that was in 1976. And so I said, this is my profession. This is what I'm looking for.
Mm.
So Dr. Bunyan eventually opens the door. He let a patient leave. And then he invited me to come in the room. And then there's a woman comes in as a patient. I don't remember what was the problem. It was a follow-up. And then after this follow-up, there's a gentleman comes in early 40s. He's a dermatologist that suffered with eczema. He had eczema all his life. And he kept repeating to Dr. Bunyan and myself, he says, I don't believe in homeopathy. But Dr. Bunyan, you have treated 2 patients of mine with eczema and you had very good success, but I don't believe in homeopathy. He really want to impress on Dr. Bunyan that he didn't believe in homeopathy. And at the end of about an hour and a quarter, Dr. Bunyan invites me to go follow him in an empty chamber, like a little a room. And he had all the oak drawers there. And he pulled a drawer, a little piece
Mm.
of paper. He writes Zincum Metallicum Tenem. Then he put a little powder in it. He rolls it. He gives it to the patient. He said, go home, put the powder in a glass of water, stir it, and take a teaspoon, and that's it. And come back in 6 weeks. Wow, I was very impressed. Just one dose, 1 teaspoon of this, and come back in 6 weeks. Well, I wasn't there 6 weeks later, but a colleague of mine, his name was Bob. He was there. He was a second-year student. He was precepting with Dr. Bunyan. He told me the dermatologist came back with the skin of a baby. He says after he took the Zincum Metallicum, it broke out all over his body. The skin eruption broke all over his body, and for the first time in his life, he had the skin of a baby.
Amazing.
And I said to myself, not only I found my profession that night, but I also found what my specialty will be.
Wow.
So,
What
so
a
then eventually I applied to National College. I was accepted, but I couldn't transfer because it didn't work. The transfer in Portland, they did anatomy over 2 years. In Toronto, they did anatomy first year and then pathology in second year. So I had to do the basic science in Toronto. So I did them. And after that, I started to like using my hands. So I said, I'll do one clinical year to be good with my hands, and then I'll transfer. And then there was only 9 months left. So I said, I better finish my course in chiropractic. And then I went over there. It was good because I was hired as a teacher there. After I was there, I entered third year, and I was hired as a teacher in the middle of my third year. And in my fourth year, I was a full-time teacher at Portland to teach all the course of manipulation.
Oh, that's great.
And tuition fee was $1,200 US, while Canadian dollar was worth $1.07. So it was worth like almost $1,000 Canadian a tuition fee. So nobody had graduated with debts at that time.
Yeah.
And so when I went to Portland, there was a doctor that knew my father knew Dr. Bastier, and another doctor. His name was Leo Roy. Maybe you remember Dr. Leo Roy. He was the one that worked with Casey Case, the one that with the ASIAC. He was a doctor working with indigenous people in Northern Ontario with the herbs for cancer.
Okay. Okay.
Anyway, he was a naturopath and a medical doctor. He lost his license as an MD, but he got a license as an ND. And he said to me, he was a friend of my father, and he said, "Oh, you're going to go to the West Coast to study at National College. Make sure to study with Dr. Bastier." I say, "Why?" He said, "He's the best doctor in the world. He's the
Wow.
really best doctor in the world." So when I went to Portland, I said, "Dr. Bastier, can I come and visit you at your office?" He refused for a long, long time, and then eventually he accepted, and I was there for about 4 or 5 years. On a monthly basis, I was in his office.
Oh, it's amazing. It's so inspiring. These stories, you know, they have a lot of value for the profession. They're inspiring. You get a sense of the history and how people used to practice. There was a spirit in the medicine. I don't sense that there's a very strong spirit. The spirit lives on in the practitioners, but the profession itself, like the way, at least the way I'm perceiving it through the educational system and the colleges, the spirit has all but been squashed out. They're one of the things that I always say that homeopathy is the way to measure the vital force of in the building, in the naturopathic medical building. And if it's out, well, then the vital force has left the building. um
Actually, if you take homeopathy out of the equation, you get rid of the concept of the body can heal itself, of
mm,
vitalism. You take the vital force that came from homeopathy. You have to understand that in naturopathic medicine.
yeah.
Idea of if you take homeopathy out, you take the vital force, then you're going to be dealing with mechanistic thinking, molecules for molecules.
Yeah.
That you're not talking about naturopathic medicine anymore.
Yeah, well, hydrotherapy has a bit of that, though, doesn't it? But the language itself, the vital force, I don't know if that existed in
No,
hydrotherapy by itself. That was homeopathy.
yeah, yeah.
Now, Andre, we see a split. There's a stronger split. I don't know if you've noticed this split between opposing views. So there's the hardcore, conventional medical wannabes. If perhaps that's a little bit disparaging, maybe a little harsh way to say it, but just somebody who's very wanting to look like a medical doctor, who shuns the idea of homeopathy, who considers it, placebo effect and non-scientific. And there's a lot of practitioners, writers that are coming out with this kind of approach. We also see this in the vaccine field. There's a split in not just our profession but in the world. So what do you what do you think about this situation where, even publications in NDNR, there's a lot of publications coming out through the internet and scientific papers that are, just trying to delegitimize homeopathy? Like, what do you think about that?
Okay, it's a question of influences. So who's talking the loudest, and who you listen to, and what are you doing your own research, or you're following influences. So it's not something you should believe or disbelieve. I mean, you should try it. It's
Yeah.
simple. You just
Yeah.
try it. And if you follow the exact methodology of the principle of similarity, you that's the best way to see if it's true or false, which Joe Schwartz or Stephen Noval have never done. They can dispute homeopathy, but they've never tried it. It's an experimentation that it's based on experimentation. And if you want to see the validity, you try the experiment. It's like somebody says, um, something doesn't work. Let's say gravity, I don't believe in gravity. Well, you say, okay, let's try something with a weight and it falls and says, this is what we call gravity, this attraction of certain thing. So you
Yeah.
try it. So if you don't believe in it, do the experimentation and find out.
I think
It's
that's
very interesting.
wise.
I think it's very interesting that in the history of homeopathy, some of the greatest homeopaths were people that disbelieve homeopathy, and
Constantine Herring.
I said I'll try the experimentation.
Yeah.
Constantin Ehring is one of them.
Well, wasn't he sent? He was sent by. Wasn't he sent by the American Medical Association?
He was not, he was in Germany first of all.
Oh yeah. Okay. Right. Sorry.
Yeah,
Of course.
there was a surgeon. His name was Robbie, a famous surgeon, and he was asked to write by a publisher to write a thesis or a work against homeopathy. And this
That's right.
he was a professor, was very busy, and he had a brilliant student. His name was Constantin Herring, and he says, Constantin, come here. For $100, would you write something bad against homeopathy? He says, sure. So to do
Hmm.
it, he read the work and he says, this is nonsense. But then he came to a place where Hahnemann wrote, nota bene to my reader, nota bene to my reader. Pay attention, he says, to my
Mm,
reader.
mm.
Don't disbelieve homeopathy, he says. Just try it. Do the experiment exactly as it is. Do the experiment exactly as it is. So Ehring did the experiment exactly as it is, and it worked. And one of the things that happened during that time, he got a dissecting wound. Dissecting wound is when you do dissection and you get an infection. You cut yourself during a dissection and you get an infection from it. So imagine a cadaver, you get an infection, especially at that time they didn't use formaldehyde.
Yeah.
So you start to have like lymphangitis. And he went to see his professor. Maybe it was Robbie, because he was professor of surgery. And he said, we'll do amputation. So then he says, okay, this is the time. He took arsenicum album. It went away. He dedicated his life to homeopathy.
Wow.
Homeopathy saved his finger. He dedicated his life to homeopathy.
Okay. So I'd like to. So you as part of your accolades, you have you graduated the Homeopathic Academy of Naturopathic Physicians, the HANP.
No, that's not a graduation. That's a recognition of knowledge.
Oh, recognition of knowledge. Like you pass some exam, and then you can put that you're very well versed in homeopathy as a naturopathic doctor. So now you have contributed to the HANP through the years.
Oh yeah, very much.
And what, may I ask, is happening right now there? There's, you know, if there's something that happened last year, it was almost a year ago exactly. There was, we call it, some of us call it the Andre Saine event.
Oh,
You you used a word that I know now that you recognize was wrong. I don't think the intention was hateful. It was ignorant. That was my stance. And do you agree with that? Would you agree with that?
no, it was a slip of the tongue.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what does that mean? A slip of the tongue, like a Freudian slip of the tongue, or you,
No, a slip of the tongue. It's a word that we use commonly in Latin. Either you say nigra, like
yeah,
Postella nigra, or like when we went in the forest the other day, we use that word about 5 or 6 times.
yeah,
Junglun nigra,
yeah,
um, nigricans. We use that word also in French.
right.
In Spanish, they use it. So the word is common knowledge. I use it very often. I will spell a name of a remedy to a patient, Illiboris naja.
Yeah,
I'll spell it to the patient. So it's a common word in French. It's a common word in Latin. It's a common word in homeopathy. All the variation of that word. And sometimes I think in French,
yeah,
and the sentence that was thinking is to be black like a black person.
Right.
French is black like an N. That's how it is in French.
Yes, yes,
But
yes,
it's
yes.
not derogatory.
Right.
It's not derogatory. So it just means black like a black man.
It just so happened that you said it in Chicago,
In
where
Chicago, the bad place.
Chicago, the racial tension is so high, and the racial tensions have never been higher. There, I've talked about this a little bit in the past. We might get into this another time on NDs for Truth, but certainly there are factions that are attempting to augment these racial tensions. Not to say that there aren't true racial issues in America that need to be resolved. I really think they do. But there was a spark that went off of the non-derogatory term of the N word that went into this hay field, and the fire just lit, and then
No, there was no fire. There was no fire actually, because I was teaching, and if you listen to the tape carefully, I said the N word, but within a fraction of a second, I say a black man.
uh-huh,
Like I
uh-huh,
cut myself, and actually,
uh-huh.
I don't remember if I said GRO or GAR. I don't remember because it was quick. Now I'm
Yeah,
teaching, and it's Saturday night. It's almost there's only 15 minutes left to the lecture or something like
yeah.
this. 20 minutes left to the lecture. I've been teaching Friday, Saturday all day, and I was teaching also on Sunday. And so, but 10 minutes later, a student approached me with this in class. He says, "No, you use a bad word." I say, "Yes, but in my culture, it's not that bad." And that was my mistake.
Right, right. Well, the mistake was you used a word not realizing the significance.
No, no, I realized the significance.
Oh, right, right, right. And
But
then and
I cut myself right away. But when it was pointed to me, I said, in my culture, is not that bad. So that
right.
was the problem.
I can see that, and I know that a lot of the very sensitive people, some like to call themselves social justice warriors. They're very unforgiving. There's no explanation. You've done something wrong, and that's it. You need to be sorry. You need to do your penance. You need to shut up, and that's it. And so you're saying that maybe that was your mistake. So fair enough. So you made a mistake. I think people are allowed to make mistakes. I think leaders are allowed to make a mistake, and I think it's a chance for healing for the profession. And I think that I would like to teach, instead of protecting everybody from their sensitivities, to teach practitioners how to be more resilient and recognize the idea that, is this the truth? What I'm being told, is somebody telling me something that is a true threat to me? Is it really undermining my sense of confidence and who I am, my identity? Or is it something that's not true and I could just dismiss it? I'd rather train doctors and train students to be resilient and to learn to love themselves and not to be so easily
Yeah, but
influenced.
the truth is this: some people are very sensitive
Yeah.
and they will be offended very easily. And I'm very, very sorry
Yeah.
if I have offended somebody by like a slip of the tongue. And then, second, for trying to say,
Trying
I
to explain it, or
yeah, it's like a common word, some degree in French. Um, so we cannot do nothing. They're very sensitive, and we have to respect that. And I'm sorry if
yeah.
it happened. However, I would invite them to look at the bigger picture. The bigger picture is we had a 3-day course on healing.
Yeah.
About healing. It was called Radical Cure,
Yeah.
the promised land of naturopathic medicine.
Uh-huh.
So if you take this event and it abstract the whole thing, I think they're not their sensitivity is so big and their hurt is so big that they have difficulty seeing the whole picture. And I'm sorry for that. It's not a blame. It's just that I find it strange that in the middle of a course about healing, this would obstruct the whole thing, and that's what people would remember from it.
Like
Well,
cast a shadow over the whole thing.
yeah, but I mean, it's a sign of the time. Also, it's a sign of the time of the genius of the time. People are very hurt, and there's a lot of tension, like you say, racial tension, and so on.
Yeah.
So um, the the teaching will live. The black mark will stay. We'll just see if it's possible to do some healing about it.
Yeah,
Use the occasion
to
to
heal and to learn and to understand the
yeah.
sensitivity of the
There's
time.
always a good thing about it. There's always a good thing that can come out from a conflict.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I do personally believe I've done some research into this, and I do personally believe that some of the language and what's been being used when racial issues arise are it's not coming from people who have really studied psychology and what really works to heal. It's like racial unrest factions that have been supporting these ideologies to create tension, to create divide. So it's there's actually agendas that are influencing this way of people being so reactive and so highly volatile emotionally, and calling for the cancellation of people who don't do it the way you should in today's times. So I find that there's a problem with that. I am open to have any discussion, to learn and to grow, and I myself have always been a proponent of all races, all walks of life, all skin colors, all religions. We're all equal. And I can imagine in your history, you've probably treated everybody under the sun in
Yes.
planet Earth.
In healing, there's no race, there's no there's ethnicities, there's no gender. It's just people,
And
people.
I agree with that. And I absolutely agree with that. Not and I understand the intention of what you're saying there. And I would say the same thing. Now, we could also add, well, there is race, there is ethnicities, and there are ways of that we can learn and be trained as doctors to understand people's sensitivities and their needs, and because different religions have different sensitivities and different needs and different, sexual orientations, for instance. Just to be educated in this, that'd be good. But I agree. But the race card is being played up so much that back in the day, even during my time, it was, you were kind of racist if you looked at somebody and said, "That's a black man." You saw the skin color. If you saw the skin color, that was a racial problem. 20 years ago. Now, if you say there, we don't see skin color, you get in big trouble today because you're denying the problem that exists. That's basically the new mentality, is that we really need to play the race card in order to address the issues. So everything becomes hugely racially charged, as far as I've seen.
Well, it's a sign of the time. The pendulum went so far one way of abuse and discrimination and dishumanizing behavior and
Yes.
culture that it's went too far. It's going out to the other extreme now.
Yes. I I could see that. I could see both the things that you're saying. And now there's some tension happening with the HANP and AANP. Is that something that you're at liberty to discuss, or something you might like to discuss?
No, I don't think it's
Okay,
it's a good time to talk about that.
fair
Eventually,
enough.
eventually we could talk about it.
Sure, sure. Just to say, not even on that topic, but that, because of this mistake that you made, there was a call for you to be canceled. You know,
It's
the
not even.
cancel.
Oh, I was canceled. I am canceled
Right.
by four institution, Netspec institution, at least
Yeah.
four.
And to me, this is really jumping on the bandwagon of this sign, what you're calling the sign of the times. It's not really balanced. It's not really in congruence with forgiveness, with the understanding somebody makes a mistake, and then, okay, so you've been teaching for since the dawn of time, right? And you made a mistake. So all of that massive amount of work and contribution and love and devotion to your profession, driving down the stupid highway for 12 hours to get to the University of Michigan just to research so you could share this with the profession, all that stuff is out the window because you said something wrong, like,
No, it's not out of the window. It's not out of the window.
okay,
I see patient on a daily basis,
Right. Good.
and they benefit from it.
Yes.
I teach on a weekly basis, and my student benefit from it,
Yes.
and their patient benefit from it.
That's good.
So if somebody feels too offended by my mistake and doesn't feel that my apology is is
Sincere or
yeah, sincere or enough,
sufficient.
sufficient,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's their prerogative, and they have to live their life. And I'm living my life, and I'm doing the best I could with my patient, and I do the best with my student, and life must go on. So
Yeah.
I might be canceled by the Naturopathic College, but there's a whole world outside of Naturopathic College that want to hear what I have to say.
Well, that's good. And it's my wish that that even with the naturopathic colleges that the inflammation will reduce and disappear, and then you could even go back, because your teachings are very valuable for the profession. Every elder, anyone like yourself who has so much experience and so much success helping their patients, helping the suffering. I mean, you're really embodying the source of our medicine, and it's my wish that all naturopathic doctors and naturopathic students will not be so influenced by the times and use more discernment and more critical thinking, rather than just being very reactive emotionally to call for the cancellation of somebody due to a mistake, or not embracing the jargon, the language of today's expectations of anti-racism, for instance, things like
Well,
that.
there's 2 points there. One, 2 weeks before, no, the same weekend, the same day of my event, the same day on the 26th of October. You can check the date. Maybe it was the day before, the 25th, Friday. But Barack Obama was addressing I think the student at the University of Chicago the same weekend as me. And he was talking about the cancel culture,
Mm-hmm.
that they're going in the wrong direction with the cancel culture. That's one point. That's an interesting point because it happened at the same moment, at the same place in time and place. The second aspect that I want to touch about this is one of the basic principle of naturopathic medicine is holism, to be able to see the whole picture.
Mm-hmm.
Cancel culture, I don't think they're able to see the whole picture, and that's unfortunate. So I would invite people to discover, try to discover the principle of naturopathic medicine and apply those principles to their life. I've been researching principle of naturopathic medicine since 1976. I've started to, no, 1976. Yeah, no, 75. Since in 1975, when I first put down the principle of medicine, I started to write down, I was interested in the principle, and I started to write down the first two principles that I discovered when I discovered chiropractic was the body can heal itself and there's cause to disease. So I wrote them down. And then over the years, I had more. Tole Kozam that I got from the reading Hahnemann. And so now I have like a set of 7 principles. But I always teach my student or my colleagues that if you look at these principles, do no harm, look at the cause of disease, you can apply these 7 principles to any aspect of life, any problem of life, whether the problem is in economics or in politics or environment or a societal problem or relationship problem. First, make sure that whatever you do will prevent problem. But despite doing the best prevention, there will be problem in life. There will be catastrophe. There will be epidemics. There will be environmental tornado and so on. So
Yeah.
you're going to need to interfere, but in interfering, do no harm. Don't make the problem worse. And then you look at the cause and you try to resolve the cause from inside.
Yes.
And then you use the resources, especially local resources, to resolve the problem. And you have to look at the if you resolve a problem here, you don't want to create another one there. So you have to look at the whole picture. The whole thing must be considered. So if you apply the 7th and the last principle that I included a few years ago is that the resolving of the problem, regardless what it is problem, if it's a health problem or a societal problem, it must be dealt gently. It must be dealt quickly. You want to resolve it quickly. You want to
Mhm.
resolve in a complete and durable manner, very in a very safe manner. So
Yeah,
this, if you abide to these seven principle, it's a way of living. Actually, these are
100%.
universal. These are universal principle.
Absolutely. You
They
know,
apply to every aspect of life. So this what baffled me with the Chicago event is that I was teaching about a subject so universal, so great, so captivating, which is healing and how to obtain radical cure. And I was caught up in the storm of sensitivity, political and this cultural sensitivity.
yeah, I know. I know. You know, the late Jim Sensenig, Dr. Jim Sensenig, had a way of saying this, which I love. It's very simple. He'd say, the truth is the truth is the truth. So when you have the principles of that you're talking about, they're universal. That's why they work. So they, like you said, they can be applied everywhere. I added another principle myself in the publication of my book, The Revolution of Naturopathic Medicine, which dealt with some of the issues I saw in the profession and dealt with some of the principles of our medicine. I introduced the idea that should be included is physician heal thyself. I think it's an important principle. I think that the intellect can be divorced from the emotion and from the rest of the person, but it gets influenced if a person hasn't worked on their issues, they haven't worked on their fears or insecurities. And I take this quite seriously in the way I teach holistic counseling, because I see that when a practitioner is sitting with a patient, if they themselves are carrying woundedness, anger or judgment or fears, or and that patient has the same thing, they respond negatively or not calmly. If they can get triggered, they can be brought into the patient and then get lose their centeredness of their role. They start thinking about their own stuff, you know. So I find physician heal thyself wouldn't be a bad principle to add to our profession as
Well, I
well.
see. I call them fundamental principle. And under each fundamental principle, there's a series of sub principle. And physician ill thyself is part of the principle of seeing the whole picture. In part of the whole picture, there's you, and
Yeah,
you must uh, live these principles, and you must apply this principle to your own self. So therefore, in the holistic perspective, you are the talker is part of that of the narrative, and the talker is walking the walk.
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, this has been a true joy. I really appreciate your time and your wisdom and your knowledge. I could talk to you for another week, just stories and ideas and principles. And just so the viewer will know, I'd like to have Dr. Saine on again when we discuss vaccinations. And there might be other topics in the future if you have interest in bringing them forward. We might have some debates on here and uh, with vaccinations, for instance. And I'd love to have you again here. I do really appreciate your time, Dr. Saine.
Okay, thank you, Moshe.
My pleasure. My pleasure. My honor. All right, everybody. So we will see you this coming Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, also 5 p.m. Pacific, for an as of yet undisclosed topic. As is often the case, we get topics last minute, but we will definitely inform you before that time. So this is Dr. Moshe signing